Yes. Tes. Tes. Cek. Tes.
At the back, could you please move forward? Within 2 minutes left, you are going to start the activity. 1 minute.
Sofian, tolong forward lagi itunya dong, flyernya saya mau forward lagi. Soalnya saya udah cari-cari susah. Ke aktivitas ya. Ini lagi exam ya Bu ya? Atau udah selesai? Saya langsung ya, jadi sekarang mau sudah exam. Ya, saya juga. Udah itu sudah apa ya? Ini video ya. Kok dihapus lagi? Oh, senang. Asik dulu pilot bu. Ya, boleh dimain dulu. Udah ya, mulai aja.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Your Excellency, the Dean of Faculty of Education, Prof. Nina Nurmila, PhD, respected PhD and Master's Program of Universitas Islam International Indonesia, honorable lecturers of the Faculty of Education, Universitas Islam International Indonesia, fellow master and also PhD program. First of all, let's raise our praise to the Almighty God Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because of Allah's mercies and blessing, we're able to be here in the lunch talk of the Faculty of Education. Salawat and salam is also dedicated to our beloved messengers of Allah, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the lunch talk of Faculty of Education under the theme AI and Language Learner Autonomy, Critical Issues, Trends, and Teacher Autonomy for Professional Learning. To commence the event, let's open the lunch talk by reciting Basmalah. The next agenda speech delivery will be delivered by the Dean of Faculty of Education to Prof. Nina Nurmila, PhD. The floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't see many people, but I hope those of you who sit at the back, please come forward. Don't be too far away, please. Come, okay. And we welcome also young listener here, okay. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin sayyidil mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. Thank you very much all for coming who are here in the theater, but also in those of you who come online. So we are here to listen to the lunch talk delivered by Dr. Teguh Khairuddin. And he will talk about AI and language learner autonomy, critical issues, trends, and teacher autonomy for professional learning. If you remember, actually, he was the speaker of lunch talk before, but he did it online from Australia. At that time, he has already completed his PhD, but now he is delivering his speech in the lunch talk as a scholar in residence. We are happy for his contribution here, not only as the speaker for lunch talk today, but also as you might already participated, especially for semester 4 MA, who is still in writing a thesis. He already accompanied you in the writing camp and also have given you the workshop on the interviewing. Yeah, I think the topic that Dr. Teguh Hairudin will deliver today is very timely and very relevant because AI is anywhere. We cannot avoid it. We just need to, I mean, to know how to use it because I remember the lecture from Dr. Oscar from Maranatha that if we use AI too much, then the higher you use your AI for what's that? Like understanding your reading, so the weaker your brain use. So it we need to know the technique in order that our humanity is not being reduced and being taken over by the tool called AI. Okay, let's listen together what Dr. Hairudin will deliver about AI and language learner autonomy. I think the word autonomy is very important. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Dr. Hairudin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Nina Nurmila, PhD, for the speech. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to handle the discussion since the AI and language learning autonomy is actually a crucial thing which close to our life. So the discussion will invite us critically on 3 dimensions. The first one is critical issues with AI in language learning, like including us into like pedagogical promises or ethical considerations, where the issues like it reshape the language learning environment globally. And the last one, it is about teachers' autonomy. I agree with Bunina said that, like teacher autonomy, we tend to think that AI is only a tools or the thing that can reshape our understanding into the educational use. So with us today here, Pak Teguh Hairudin PhD, I was amazed when I read his identity. The thing that amazed me is he got 2 master in 2 different university international. Like he was like completing his master in Macquarie University. Is that correct, Pak? Macquarie University and also University of Melbourne with 2 different program. In Macquarie University, he was like in Master of Research, and then in Unimer, he was in like applied linguistics. And he has been everywhere actually, focusing on the education especially and some other things. So I don't want to explain a bit more. So I'd like to welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and join me to welcome Mr. Teguh Hairudin, PhD. Give a round of applause. Time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for the moderator for the kind introductions. Thank you to Prof. Nina and the Faculty of Education of UIII, the Triple IU, for having me here. This is my second time talking in this academic forum. And yeah, I will take this opportunity to share my thoughts and also related to my research. Yeah, so yeah, AI and language learner autonomy. I agree that Prof. Nina mentioned this is timely because as we can see that artificial intelligence tools is everywhere. Yeah, it promises some opportunities, but also pose some threats for us, some challenges that we have to be we have to be wise to navigate this new educational landscape with the mediations of artificial intelligence. And also learner autonomy. The concept of autonomy has fascinated me very much since my research in Okay, now, okay, before we talk about AI, let's revisit the concept of learner autonomy. When I ask teachers what learner autonomy means, many of them will answer learning independently, learning by student learning by themselves. Well, it's partially true, but it's not complete, right? Learner autonomy, the definitions, I think maybe one of the most cited definitions come very early in 1980 by a French, Henri Olek in 1981. He defined learner autonomy as the ability to take charge of one's own learning. Here, note that the phrase that he used, take charge. So it is not only students learning by themselves, students doing their own homework, but taking charge, taking responsibility to their own learning. So it entails in itself student determine why they want to learn, what they want to learn, how they are going about the learning process, even including the students making sure that they make progress in their learning. So monitoring capacity, right? So that's what Henry Holle conceptualized with learner autonomy. Later on, Phil Benson, also very well known in the field of learner autonomy, he used, instead of using the word taking charge or taking responsibility, he used the term control, right? He said that learner autonomy is the capacity that learners have to take control of their own learning. So notice the difference between taking charge and control. He said that by control, he means it is something that that is more observable behaviors. He later on conceptualized this control includes three dimensions of control: controlling the learning management, so it is the planning behavior, students plan what they learn, the contents, the objective, and also the cognitive process, right? So the students taking control of um, how they reflect, how they try to reflect on what they learn, right? And then how they plan for the improvement, right? So the cognitive process. And lastly, the control over the learning contents, right? So that's the what and the why of the learning process. Now, the thing with learner autonomy is it is difficult to be operationalized. It is difficult to measure, right? Because when Henry Hollek defined learner autonomy as the ability, um, Phil Benson conceptualized this capacity as more multidimensional, more social, so it is even more abstract, right? So that's why he proposed using the word control here to make it more observable. And he also theorized that you probably may have heard also the theory of self-directed learning. So in these conceptualizations of learner autonomy by Phil Benson, self-directed learning is understood as the implementations of the capacity of being autonomous, right? So that is why Reinders here proposes 8 observable behaviors that we can see from learners to tell if autonomous learning happens here. So he proposes a cycle of 8 observable self-directed learning behaviors. This is cyclical, which means that, for example, if you may start with setting goals, and then after setting goals, the students then plan the learnings, plan the material, right? But then if you go up to the 8 stages, the setting goal itself will be influenced by the reflections of the students of what happened, what works, what didn't work. So there will be resetting of the goal. So this is cyclical in nature, right? So this is the cycle of 8 observable self-directed learning behaviors proposed by Hayo Reinders. At the core of this cycle is students' ability to reflect, to motivate themselves to keep moving even when that difficulty when in their learning, and also some collaborative aspect of learning. So there's also interaction here. Now, another framework when we try to understand learner autonomy is proposed by David Noonan. If you work in English language teaching, you probably have known this very popular name, yeah, David Noonan. He theorized the 5 levels of learner autonomy. Right? He used the words learner's actions, yeah, that indicate the stages of autonomous capacity that the students possess. So he would start with awareness. Being aware of the pedagogical goals and content of the learning is only the starting point of being autonomous learners. And then being involved in selecting on goals from a given range of alternatives is the next step. Modifying and adapting the goals is even the further steps. And then creations, and at the end of level of learner autonomy is that the students able to bridge between what they learn in the classroom with what happened outside the classroom. So bridging what is inside the world institutions to beyond the classroom. So let's take a sample of you probably are familiar with the language learning application Duolingo. Who use Duolingo here? Do you use Duolingo, right? For some students, probably they have used Duolingo. They follow the material in Duolingo. They do the task that the Duolingo provide for the users, but using or following the structure or the task in Duolingo probably indicates only at the first or the second steps of learner autonomy, because they didn't have any say to what they need to learn. So they just follow. They know the goals. They know what they are going to learn, but it's only the awareness. So this is still the early stage of learner autonomy. Now imagine if students using Duolingo, they use Duolingo, they do all the tasks, but then they also look at the report provided by Duolingo and then analyze what they need to learn, what they need to improve, right? So in that sense, we see that the same technology is used very differently, and we also see the exercise of learner autonomy capacity in a very different level, right? So there is how, just to illustrate how this um, framework can be used, right? Okay, now, so learner autonomy has been around since 80s, and then it is becoming in the recent maybe 1 or 2 decades has become like a buzzword in the field of educational research, because if you see the policy in many countries, they usually put some kind of independence, autonomy, right? So something along that line to show the expectation of the curriculum, of the expected goals of the curriculum of the students. So worldwide, it has been implemented in many curriculum. So including in Indonesia, I I remember in my because my research was in 2021, also referring to the curriculum mandated by the ministry. They also mentioned the ability to be autonomous in the curriculum. Right? That is why of learner autonomy. I know textbook is sometimes seen as a very minimum learning resource because because of its limited use, right? And it tends to be very prescriptive, right? But then in many cases in Indonesia, also in many other countries, sometimes textbook is the only available resources, the cheapest, the easiest resources that students can have on 5 EFL textbook in Indonesia, 3 locally published and 2 internationally published. 2 of them are published by government. Sorry, 1 is published by government, 2 local publishers, and 2 other international publishers. Some schools have the luxury to access maybe a book from Pearson, from Cambridge, right? So they also need to be and analyze, and then that learner autonomy. And the result is we found that textbook failed to provide enough structural task-based opportunity for self-directed learning. There is still very little opportunities for learners to be involved in not only following the material, but also in deciding where the learning should go forward. Right? So minimum opportunity for that. Even when the support exists, it remains really at a superficial level, limited to low-level awareness or minimal token involvement. So, for example, in the beginning of the chapter, usually the textbook mentions the learning objective, which is the learning objective of the chapters. But then, if you read through, all the tasks is very prescriptive. You should do this, teacher should do that. So this is like there is no room at all. I mean, if the teachers are capable enough, they will probably modify the activity. But imagine if it is, yeah, like teachers with, you know, like in rural area, in primary school, and also those who have not enough strong, you know, knowledge about autonomy, they will just follow the task, right? So the consequences, textbooks have not been adequately utilized for developing learner autonomy, and this baseline limited personnel and teachers to seek alternate spaces for genuine practice. And there is also this, I think, why then learners and also teachers have to resort to different learning resources other than what is provided by the government. Okay. Now, here is when artificial intelligence come into play here. Because of those limitations of of textbook, and then AI become more popular and more accessible, it somehow gives us some promises that we can even push the agenda of developing learner autonomy further, right? So the shift is moving from static material like textbook to something more open. Yeah. Right. So I'll just move on. So I like the word that is used by one of the author, one that I studied here, Anton. He used the word AI wilderness, to see the richness of the resource that we can find in AI, but it's also like wilderness, like a jungle. There's so many confusion, so many dark corners, yeah, that you may get confused, may get lost, yeah. So we have to thread, we have to navigate this new jungle of artificial intelligence landscape very carefully. Now, so yeah, of course, like any other technology, when it comes becoming popular, education always try to incorporate that in education. There's also what happens here in artificial intelligence. We can see here, I'm trying to put those studies using the control dimensions mentioned by Phil Benson, control of learning management, control of learning cognitive, and control of learning content. Right. So here are some examples of studies that are talking about this aspect and how the AI helps students have control over these dimensions. And also there's also some example of tools. Many of them actually are not quite familiar. Maybe we are familiar with ChatGPT and Gemini and Elsa, but those other things are actually AI that you can access. Some of the AI are designed specifically for the research, but many of them are actually open. Okay, let me go through one by one. Yeah, learning management. This is a study by Ali and friends. So in this research, the researchers designed a generative AI chatbot. They call it Teacher Gaia. So it is designed to support self-directed learning outside the classroom. The way that this AI is claimed to support learning autonomy is by giving the students choices to design their own learning objectives and academic plan. And for example, if you want to learn something, I want to learn IELTS in the next 3 months, and this AI can help you decompose those big tasks into more manageable tasks. So that is what this AI can do. So it's decomposing complex tasks into smaller manageable steps with defined timeline. And not only that, this AI also have give the user questions whether or not they have achieved what they learned. So in that sense, it enables learners to autonomously track progress using an interactive record of their activities. So this is one example of a study that uses AI that facilitates learners to take control over the learning management. Right. So here, the students transition from passive recipients of the curriculum to become the active planners who are responsible for their own learning outcomes and also evaluation. So if you're interested in reading the study, you can go to Ali et al. Maybe I can give you I share with you the study. Now, the next one is another study on the control of cognitive process by Du in 2025. In this is they use two different AI. One is BERT for error detection, and one is SPI-C. I don't know how to pronounce it. SPI-C for grammar parsing. And this is an AI that gives the students immediate feedback. So it provides real-time error-specific feedback that prompted immediate self-corrections. So different from what we have from, for example, Grammarly or apa ya? I think Grammarly is a good example because when you write something, Grammarly will show you what's wrong with the sentence. But here, it does not only show you the error, but it also gives you metacognitive prompts. It asks you to compare your error log to last week's goal. So it asks you to compare what is wrong, what you did wrong today, and what you did wrong in the previous days. So in that sense, you can monitor the progress. Right? And it also gives you a question to how far you want to go on this path of, for example, if you are trying to learn how to write. And it gives the student scaffold to self-evaluate their own work. It helps students monitor their internal thought process. And the study claimed the use of this AI have resulted in 133% improvement. It's very impressive. 133% of improvement in the students' self-regulated learning scores is a survey. Yeah? right? And this is also very interesting research by Anton assessment, a semester-long course where university German learners engage in self-directed economic challenges. Um, in this um, in this area also the researcher give the students opportunity to choose the goals of their learning objective, the content of their learning. So it combines different AI tools. You can use any AI tools that you wish you want. Right? So you can use DeepL for basic fixes, but you can also ask ChatGPT if you want to, try to formulate something more complex. Yeah. Now, the thing with this use and interesting about this research is the research asks the participants not to accept all the suggestions or any result that is provided by the AI. Instead, the researcher asks the participant to analyze, evaluate if the result suit to their needs or their learning goals. So in that sense, the researcher asks the participant not to rely 100% of what AI provides you, but you have to still have your voice in the work that you have resulted collaboratively with AI tools. So here, the researchers come up with the concept of distributed agency. So proposes a new reconceptualization of learner autonomy to include what he called distributed agency. So autonomy manifests as distributed agency where learners collaboratively work with AI, but remain the primary director of the human AI partnership. So it is the human who still take control. Right? So AI is the tools, but human is still the main helm, the main control of the learning here. Yeah, so propose this new definition of learning autonomy in the AI environment. Learning autonomy is the capacity to engage productively with AI while maintaining critical awareness and personal agency. So here, the highlight is in the critical awareness and personal agency. Technology must amplify independent and critical thinking, not substitute for those two important aspects of human critical thinking. Yeah. Now, let's move on to the dark side. So we have talked about the opportunities, we have talked about the promises. Now, what about the dark side, the threats that AI brings to learning? Right. The first one, sorry. The first one is what is called passive dependency or the intellectual crunch. Yeah. So imagine students have a task like writing. They have to write an essay. They know the prompt. They put the prompt to ChatGPT or Gemini or any other tools, and ChatGPT give the students the results, the essay, and then this is what my students they admit they dumbing down they dumb down the language so that the lecturer will not detect it as AI generated. So they will try to maybe modify the words, put some typos, right? So dumbing down the. In that, when he produced the essay, he probably would feel there would probably a sense of achievement. There would probably a sense of he managed to complete some learning goals, right? So in a sense, it gives an illusion of autonomy because he can do this only by himself and ChatGPT, right? So, but this is a feel. This is what Adrian called illusory autonomy, feeling in control of a product without developing the underlying internal competence. So in that scenario, the student bypass many essential critical processes such as analysis, synthesis, revisions, and so on. So this is what we don't want to happen, right? So, but this is the threat because of the massive use of AI. So that's one, intellectual crutch. And the next one is the erosion of agency. Many people take it for granted that AI give you the best answers. They do not, what they don't realize is AI read a pattern. They read your pattern, the input that you put. The answer that they provide to you is based on what you like, what you have input before. So there's an algorithm behind the answers. And this algorithm, so AI is a knowledge mediator. This algorithm may make your answer biased because it's only like whatever you like. Right? So it's only based on whatever you like. It's only based on whatever input that or discussion that you have made with the AI before, right? Hidden algorithm subtly shape learning paths and potentially constrain individual choices and homogenize authentic second language voices. So I want to take it back to the context of language learning autonomy because of many language learners use ChatGPT the same way, so we can expect that probably some language learners will start sounding the same. They will produce similar, wording in their essay, similar thought process. Outline, for example, because of this subtle algorithm that works behind the AI without the users realizing. There is a threat of erosion of agency, so we cannot find the true voice of the users or the learners in their answers. Right. How many minutes do we have? A lot. Okay, good. Nice. Right. Yeah, going back to the concept of the one wilderness, AI wilderness. So AI mediated learning is like a jungle. It has a rich resource, but it demands advanced navigational skills. You have to really understand what works, how AI works, how AI come up with the answers. And I'm not trying to say that we have to stay away from AI, but what I'm proposing here is we have to use AI wisely, right? Without losing our voice, our critical thinking. So agency is in this context is seen as not a mere human characters, but it is now distributed between human cognition and the use of AI. So this is a new interesting development in the way people see agency here, right? So agency is not solely human, it is shared and negotiated between the learner and the AI. AI provides real-time scaffolding, generation of results and outputs, but humans should maintain the primary control by making conscious choices on how and when to engage with AI. So now all those promises, all those threats leave us with this question. So as teachers, what do these promises and threats leave us? So there is a new role here. Teachers should take a different role in learning. Teachers are not teachers are now not the sole source of knowledge for the students. I think it has not become that long time ago when we invent Google. students already ask everything on Google. Now with AI, it's become more relevant. That teacher is now not the primary source of knowledge in the classroom. So instead, the teachers have to take a role of the orchestrator of AI, the use of AI in the classroom, right? So teachers have to orchestrate how AI is used in the classroom because we cannot avoid it. Learners use it, so we have to teach them how to navigate in this AI environment. So the goal is to use AI to provide scaffolding to develop autonomy by embedding reflective journal, SAI to do error analysis, and let students read what AI generate from that analysis, SAI to facilitate self-evaluation, yeah, to ensure technology is used for critical inquiry, not just automated completions. So I believe this is the next roles, yeah, that teachers need to assume in the next in this AI mediated learning. Now, so this is related to what I have studied in my PhD. In my PhD, I studied how teachers try to learn how to navigate this digital technology, AI mediated learning on their own. And I use the phrase on their own because when it comes to technology, teacher training provided by external organization, by the schools, by the education office, by the government, is often not enough when it comes to technology. Because when you learn how to use technology, you will need more time. You will need more, trial and error, right? So with that considerations, I pursue this research because I believe that what happened. So in my research, I try to explore what teachers do when they try to improve their technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge beyond the formal teacher training program, right? And AI, like what we have discussed in the previous slides, has that opportunity, right? Promise us some tools that teachers can use to develop that impact. Yeah. So in 2024, in my PhD, I study self-directed experiment. I study the concept of informal teacher learning for developing TPEC, technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge. And I should mention the context of the study. The context is the pandemic, when everything suddenly changed, when teachers suddenly have to move to online. Ready or not, they have to move to online. They have to learn how to use Zoom. They have to learn how to use Google Meet without any preparation. Teachers, I saw some teacher training provided by the government, by the ministry, but it cannot keep pace with the need for teachers to do it immediately, right? So that is why on that occasion, on that period, teachers have to go beyond formal training program to learn how to use technology. And it turns out teachers are very resilient. Yeah, our teachers are very resilient and resourceful. They go far and beyond to learn about digital technology. They go to YouTube, for example, to learn how to share slides on Google Meet, right? How to use these features on Zoom, many things. They go to Instagram because one of our participants mentioned that he learned from this teacher who learned to share like some learning strategy, tips and tricks how to teach online, right? So very resourceful. Then also they join some virtual community. Like many teachers on that period, they created some teacher community, virtual teacher community on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on social media, to just share what the difficulty they have when they teach, and some of the teachers will give some suggestions, some help, and if they succeed on implementing something, they would share with the teacher. So there are some exchanges of ideas, right? Best practices. So in that interaction, learning happens, right? And this is what I want to emphasize. It's the AI here and digital technology in general indeed have the potential to leverage this teacher autonomy. Right. For example, one of my participants, an English teachers in rural area, he engaged with AI-powered language learning applications. He mentioned Duolingo and some other applications to maintain and improve language proficiency. Even though that he's already a teacher, nobody asked him to do that, but he used it. Many teachers try to master new instruction tools by using step-by-step video on YouTube. Yeah, said about this, the messaging application for collaborative informal teacher learning. Yeah, and website, Google, a lot of things. Yeah, teachers can find a lot of learning resources to improve their technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge from the internet, right? And even one teacher go further by when he learns something, he would watch different video on the same topic just to find a different perspective on the topic. So I think this is a very interesting use of digital technology by teachers, right? Okay. Right. So this is what I want to highlight, yeah, in my talk here. Referring to what have been mentioned before by David Little and Phil Benson, they said that the development of autonomy in learners requires, so the prerequisite for that to happen is that the teachers themselves have to have that capacity of autonomy. Right? So we cannot expect students to navigate the AI world critically and independently if their teachers are not empowered, if they are not autonomous, and if they don't have the necessary knowledge and skills to navigate the technology. Right? So teacher autonomy here is the foundation of the development of autonomy in the learners. Yeah. So if you want the learners to become autonomous, you have to start from yourself. And here we have talked about how teachers exercise his capacity to do professionally autonomously to improve their teacher autonomy capacity. Right. So this is what I want to leave the talk, to conclude my talk. First, AI is here and they are here to stay, and maybe even develop even further. So we cannot reject them, we cannot neglect them. We have to embrace them, right? And by embracing is not by giving up to let AI take over, yeah, take over the world, take over our thinking process, but to share the agency. We have to be still at the helm, at the control, right? We use AI, but we have to still have the agency, right? And we have to use AI to provide adaptive scaffold, because that's what AI is very good at, to give, plan scaffolding for the learners. So we have to make the most use of it. And use AI to support the climb, but then gradually remove the scaffold. I think that's the idea of scaffolding. And we have, as a teacher, we are the cultivator of critical awareness. We teach students how to use AI responsibly, and also to include their critical judgment, critical evaluations on the AI, on the use of the AI, including the result that provided by AI. And lastly, we have to invest a lot on teacher professional learning, especially to make them more ready, more fluent in using technology, in this case AI, for their for their teaching practice. I think that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much for listening and looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teguh, for the really insightful presentations. Well, it's really interesting when I heard about the ideas of intellectual crutch. Wow, it's really interesting. We couldn't deny that we rely on AI a lot because AI is everywhere. Then the synthesizing of our idea will be on AI as well. But I was questioning on how is the genuine of our idea can be measured after using AI itself. As a teacher, how can we see students' genuine writing even if they are using the AI itself? But I'd like to go back to the floor. Is if there anything to declare, so you can just raise your hands if you have any questions. Any questions? No? Okay, please, Bu Tati.
Thank you, Mas Rio ya. Mas Ramsram. Yang mana? Okay. This is not a question actually. This is we are also reflecting, because this sophistication, increasingly sophisticated AI is very fast growing. At the same time, we're figuring out how to learn in our own field. And then, so my question will be probably, it's not a question, but probably learning from your experience as you are researching this and you are learning, you are working closely with teachers across the country, in Indonesia. I'm just wondering how much you see the theories and the research done outside of Indonesia will be applied, or something that probably will not happen, considering that the autonomy is one thing, emphasizing a lot on individual, but also there are also some aspect of structure, sociocultural thing, and then policy, something that out of our control. Sometimes individual willingness and autonomy can be overridden by those external factors. So I'm just wondering, based on your ongoing engagement with teachers, especially in the informal or formal ones, how do you think this AI, I don't know, learning, investing for teachers should look like?
Well, is there any other from the other participants, so we can move directly to Mr. Teguh to answer the questions? No? Okay, please.
Thank you very much, Bu Tati, for the question. Yeah, I think this AI has become like a new buzzword, in research, especially in our field, education. And currently, many institutions try to regulate the use of AI. So I think there is also one aspect of AI use that is now being discussed, the regulations of how to what extent we can use AI, to what extent students are allowed to use AI. And this is still ongoing discussion because it relates to so many aspects of learning, and especially when it comes to ethic, yeah. Like the agency also, right? How far we can rely on AI, right? And the ethical aspects of doing like works by help by AI, for example. So I think, yeah, there's so many directions. I cannot predict which direction, but I think there's so many directions this AI research will go. But this is a very promising field, and I think if you are interested into AI, I think this is a timely. It is about the time to go research on that field.
Thank you, Pak. Does it answer you, Bu Tati? It's not a question, actually. It's clarifications anyway. Thank you. Is there any other from other participants? No? So, yes, please. Oh, Pak Lukman or Mas Muhammad first? Pak Lukman next.
Thank you, Mr. Leo, Mr. Teguh. I don't know. I think it's not a question as well as a bit more like a reflection as well, Pak Teguh. We know that students and everyone use AI, and to be honest, sometimes it is very much demotivating when we are trying to see their work, but then we don't know who are we measuring? Is it our students or AI, right? So initially I'm a very enthusiastic lecturer in terms of criticizing students' work, but then to be honest, it is demotivating because somehow we know, right? Somehow we know, and I can easily understand how they try to manipulate to some extent, like the typos is there, and I know that these typos just not make any sense, you know. Sometimes, and that is how to reduce the number of AI. I don't know. Can you share with us how can we, how can we handle this one?
That's everyone's question. How to detect, because AI AI generate like writings, but then AI also provide with you tools how to humanize the text. So they provide you with the tools to detect AI product, but then also they provide you tools with how to make it looks like it's yours. So it's very difficult, Pak. I think we have to some extent accept that students will have to use AI. They will use AI. But then, to which extent we allow them use AI? I think that is also important question, Pak. Like, I think the academic would already embrace it by if you submit paper, for example, they will ask you to declare how much AI did you use. They're not saying that you are allowed to use it 100%, but they ask you some transparency how much AI. So I think for example, I use a lot of AI. My students also use a lot of AI. Mainly to if because of English is not our language, right? So sometimes we are not sure with what we write, and then we want AI to help us check the language. I think to that extent it is okay. But then if it comes to producing the ideas and we claim it as ours, I think that is the boundary where we cannot accept AI. So yeah, I think this is a very difficult question. This is the question that we have to discuss how to deal with this. Some institutions have tried to regulate how to the use of AI. I don't know. Do you have the regulation here? Not yet.
Yeah, because you are asking, wondering about US, wondering how Pak Teguh, see himself, always constantly facing the issues of whether it is authentic or not in terms of the writing, especially us in the graduate level. It is very challenging. But I think I learned something that really changed the way I see my students. I went to, like last month, I went to China university. They were discussing centering on the AI architect of learning in higher education. So they invited lecturers or leaders from universities in Asia mostly. So from Singapore, Taiwan, and Thailand and Malaysia and so forth. So that university, Kunshan University, is one of the largest liberal arts. Yeah, liberal arts. They're focusing on humanities, not just you know how humanities. They're embracing about the importance of human rather than focusing on machine learning and things like that. So they were. I was wondering, as I told them that in our university, I'm fearing that we don't have that kind of policy. So it's like don't ask, don't tell kind of policy. So people are sitting out. We know it is in use, so we know completely. And then the students, so everyone, installing it, it's already there. Whenever we have an update. So it is like we cannot just put the blind eyes on that. So I was wondering, so I shared that information and asked two educators in their room wondering about what your policies are. And then most of them are no longer relying on ChatGPT. So basically, they don't want to use that machine just to put suspicion on the student. Instead, see the opportunities rather than always fighting with the student. So they put the energy how much the student can learn, and then the kind of learning that happening, then acknowledging AI. So I think that's the energy that emerged at that room. So I think. And they do a demonstration how the student using AI, and apparently if they give the space visibly about the use of AI, we learn a lot from the younger generation because they think differently. And then the way they demonstrated us, ourselves actually, because there was a student demonstrating how they, the field of study was art and design. So it's not like machine or math. So they are combining like your overlaps the human and then AI generation and then the agency. You see the overlap. That's exactly what they are doing. So combining the expertise and then how AI can generate the idea of design. And then they also have an agency. They tell AI, this is not what I want, basically saying that. This is what you don't have this kind of information and I need something like that. So basically they're conversing with AI. And then for me it was kind of, yes, we need to shift our attention, not just gatekeeping, policy the students' work, but rather see where the opportunities are. Yes, it is hard for us, the older generation where we are painstakingly putting sentences together in English, that it was a painful process for us, but we have to face it. It's not the way to expect our students to do that. It's perhaps they're lost, they don't have the voice. For us, we had to find our voice in using English because we are second language writers in English. I think to go back to my sharing is I think we need to move beyond that gatekeeping in the policy. So we have more energy to use AI before we are too behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. Mr. Ron.
There are questions in the chat box, Pak Leo. Can you hear me? Thank you, Pak Khairuddin, for such an insightful presentation. Indeed, AI is inevitable and multifaceted, right? So, the concept of wired, if you don't use it wisely, you lost the navigation. And now the technology is also advancing. You see that there's a apps or application of they are doing like answer that AI or things that really like they're like an addiction. So you can be like they provide you even it's in the sense that they addict you to that. If you don't use that, and for example, cloud is writing, and if you double check, you get lost. So there's also a challenging in advancement of technology. So some of the students that they are using cloud or answer.ai, where they take over your cognitive flexibility or critical thinking. So how do you address that? How do you address that challenge? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you're right. That's actually the challenge. Yeah, that's actually one of the point I present. Yeah, how to not lose our critical thinking, right? How to not just let the AI tools to do all the thinking process. Right? So we have to still have the agency have to still be the control in this use of AI. I think I have give you some examples. One of the research in which the researchers teach the participant, basically the students, how to use AI wisely by making them aware that this is how AI works, but we cannot just rely on it. To tell them the algorithm, the bias that I may pose to that they may have in their answers, and how they better best deal with this bias, and how to they what they can adopt, what they have to modify from the AI generated answers. So I think we teachers should take the roles of to make the students know AI and how to use it. That is why I think one of the many I think many teachers have studied this. They teach the students how to make proper prompt. Right? I think they call it prompting ya Papa ya. Prompting, right? Prompt engineering, right? Prompt engineering. So they can modify the answer and also trying to understand how AI works. I think that is also one of the steps to understand how AI works. In that sense, I think we can gradually make the students understand and then take more control of the use of AI. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mahmoud. Hopefully it answers you. Now we move on to the online questions. Okay, well. What about the reliability of AI tools for language interpretation and translation, assisting researchers in assessing foreign source of knowledge? And then the second one, how students and lecturers are not relying on AI on and on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, about the interpret translation. Oh, translation is so advanced. I mean, the accuracy for the accuracy, I think it is very accurate. It's pretty accurate. But now the interpretation, that's another thing. Yeah, I think there is some they call it hallucination, right? AI hallucinate. So when they interpret, they may hallucinate with their answer. So be careful with that. So and there are studies researching because it's very interesting. If there are studies that assess the accuracy of translations or interpretations, but I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. AI, if it is not reliable now, it's just a matter of time. It became more reliable. We remember ChatGPT a few years ago, maybe a few months ago. They provide false literature, right? When we ask something, ChatGPT will provide with you false references, like fake references. But look at it now; it gives you a lot more accurate references. So it's the first one is just I don't know, so fast. So if it is not, so my answer to that is, if it is not accurate now, it will be very soon. Bagaimana agar bagaimana ya? It sounds like you want to limit the user right. On the other hand, wants to not to keep you away from AI, but how to use it more effectively and responsibly. I think we have to move to that direction. So we cannot say docent or lecturer and students do not use AI, but instead we have to show them how to use it more responsibly and more critically. I think that's the way forward.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you, everyone. Yes, due to the time, let's close the sessions. On behalf of Faculty of Education, we would like to extend huge appreciations to Mr. Teguh Hairudin, PhD, for the presentations. And we would like to now move on the given of token appreciations will be given by the Dean of Faculty of Education, Prof. Nina Nurmila, PhD. Thank you. And we would like to invite all the participants as well because we are only having limited numbers. So it's okay to have us in a frame. So the slide for the first slide. Everyone please come forward. It is very limited. Where is the photographer? Sofian is dealing with the slides. Thank you, Pak Teguh, and everyone. Let's close the session by reciting hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.